Morant with a running start. Ebanks, oh, my goodness. Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. We are in the offseason for the Grizzlies. Of course, the playoffs are still going on. We're getting a lot of exciting results from that, but there hasn't been much going on for the Grizzlies. There's been a few minor news items here and there, but there hasn't been much to talk about. So I took a little bit of a break. Hope you will forgive me there and forgive me for contributing to the lack of Grizzlies content out there. But we do have a few things to go over, and so I thought it would be a good idea to check in. The news items to hit, first of all, it's official. Zach Edey and Jaylen Wells both made the all-rookie first team. We basically knew that was going to happen a couple of weeks ago when they both finished top 5 in the Rookie of the Year vote. So Jaylen and Zach become the first NBA teammates to both make the all-rookie first team since Ja Morant and Brandon Clark. So that's a nice honor for those two. Also, we got news that Jaylen Wells has gotten the medical all clear after the scary injury he suffered against the Hornets that, of course, knocked him out for the playoffs. Jaylen Wells' dad posted on Twitter that he's got the medical all clear, and that's better news than the all-rookie first team. Also, looking ahead to the Grizzlies offseason, and I think what I'm going to talk about the most this episode, we found out finally when the all-NBA team is going to be announced, and it is on Friday. I'm recording this right now on Thursday, May 22nd, so tomorrow on Friday, we will find out if Jaren Jackson Jr. makes an all-NBA team. Also, by the way, on Thursday, we will find out if Jaren Jackson Jr. makes an all-defensive team. I am guessing he's going to be second team all-defense. As far as a guess whether or not he makes all-NBA, not really sure. It's going to be very, very close. It's possible he just misses it. And the reason, if you've been living under a rock, the reason we're so concerned about Jaren making an all-NBA team, of course, we would like him to be honored, but whether or not he makes the all-NBA team basically is the first domino to figure out what the Grizzlies are going to do this offseason. So a couple of things to talk about on this episode. What the path forward will look like if Jaren makes it or if he doesn't make it. And also, I wanted to address a couple of things that I'm hearing and seeing about this Grizzlies team. I think with their disappointing end to the season, a lot of conversation among Grizzlies fans and among just national NBA podcasters, broadcasters, analysts is figuring out if this version of the Grizzlies needs to be broken up. Is the big three good enough to win a title? And a lot of it that I'm hearing from the Grizzlies side of things is saying things like, I don't want Jaren to get paid all this money. I don't think he's worth it. And then talking about Desmond Bane's salary and talking about how much he makes and whether his contract is good or bad. So I want to address a couple of things that I think are worth talking about as far as the value of those two players and what it means with the amount of money they're going to make and whether or not the big three is good enough to compete for a title. So let's get into some of that. Before I do, just a reminder, if you want to support the creation of this program, if you want to hear from me when episodes are not coming out, well, I'm in the Slack channel, the listener Slack channel over at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. I'm in there talking about the Grizzlies when I'm not on social media, when I'm not releasing episodes. So if you want to support the creation of these episodes, you want to get in on that listener Slack channel. If you want to get a bonus monthly episode answering listener questions, you can do all of that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. So real briefly, I would like to address just some of the things I hear, the criticisms I hear levied against the Grizzlies' current big three. Like, I think what happens when you get blown out in the postseason is you start thinking, all right, maybe we need to trade one of these three guys. I think the exercise most people are doing is trying to come up with fake trades for the Grizzlies. And most people, I think, are coming to the conclusion, oh, wait, it's hard to get better trading away these three guys. How are you going to get players who are better than them? And in some situations, people are like, oh, Desmond Bane makes too much money. Let's get a player better than Desmond Bane who makes less than Desmond Bane. What I'd like to explain to you here, and what I think a lot of people are figuring out, those players don't really exist. So again, as fast as I can do it, let's run through the reasons why you probably aren't going to break up your big three. Why it's probably not a good idea to trade any of Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., or Desmond Bane. The easiest one is starting with Ja Morant. Most Grizzlies fans are not interested in trading Ja Morant. I don't think the front office is interested in trading Ja Morant. But then when you look at the landscape of the league and you say, even if we wanted to trade Ja Morant, which playoff teams would even be interested? Because it's not normally going to be a rebuilding team. Rebuilding teams don't trade for players usually on max contracts. There is no rebuilding team anymore, or non-playoff team. You might think of a team like the Kings, where you're like, this team isn't particularly good at team building. Or like the Bulls. Would the Bulls or Kings go all in to get a superstar in Ja Morant? Maybe, but probably not. So I think because this isn't the type of trade you see, where a team with a lot of assets like draft picks and young good players, they're not going to trade that in for Ja Morant. So it's easy, I think, to move on from Ja Morant. There's no avenue for trading him, even if you wanted to, and I don't think anyone wants to trade him. Now, the next things about Jaren and Desmond, and this is what I want to refute maybe some of these things that I hear, at least offer my opinion on why they're inaccurate. Like, we hear things saying like Desmond Bane isn't good enough as a third option for a title contending team. You say Desmond Bane's not good enough as a third option. We need a player better than Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane's contract is too big. We say things like, or I hear people saying like, Jaren Jackson Jr. isn't worth a max. You can't have a big man like that making that much money who's a bad rebounder. Let's break down some of those things. Let's start actually with Jaren, because he is the priority. He's the biggest storyline for the Grizzlies. He's the reason we're trying to figure out, are we going to use cap space to try to renegotiate and extend Jaren? Are we going to have him make the All-NBA team? Thus, we can offer him this designated veteran contract, which would start the following season, where he would make at minimum 30% of the cap. Now, let's parse some of these numbers. Is Jaren worth 30% of the cap? I think unquestionably yes. This requires very little nuance in my mind. Absolutely yes. Paying the max for a guy who I think is clearly a top 20 or 25 player, that's a very simple decision. That's what you do every single time. I think you could, even a critic of Jaren wouldn't put him as like lower than like the 35th best player or something. And I know ranking players is incredibly hard and very subjective, but you have a perennial, all defensive team player. And as you know, if you listen to this show, he was top 10 in the NBA in points per minute last season. He is a rare and unique player. Of course, he doesn't fit neatly into maybe the specific box that people expect for like a big man, but he's a fantastic NBA player. Even if you have rebounding criticisms or you worry about his high foul rate, yes, those are valid criticisms for why Jaren is not a clear-cut top 15 player. But having a 7-foot elite defender who can also make threes, who's particularly adept at scoring off the dribble, that's amazing. And I feel like we lose sight of the fact that that's amazing. Saying you wish he played a different style, saying, hey, this elite defender who's, 7 feet tall, who can also score at a rate alongside the other best scorers in the NBA, saying, I wish he played more like Carlos Boozer or Kendrick Perkins and grabbed more rebounds. To me, that's idiotic. I think the goal of team building is finding great players. You have a great player in Jaren Jackson Jr. You have an all-star. And the objective now is to find the players that best fit around him. Same story with Ja Morant. You're supposed to be finding players that best fit around them and overcome their shortcomings. Jarens being maybe foul trouble, rebounding, some of those typical things. Now, there is a conversation to be had about Jaren's postseason struggles. The only argument I will hear for why Jaren wouldn't be worth like a 30% max is saying I don't trust him in the playoffs. And that does add a tiny wrinkle. Jaren, I think, absolutely has struggled in the postseason. And because of that, you might say, well, that's why I want to move on from him. The issue being, of course, if you move on from him, the odds of getting another player, like the odds of getting another top 20 player in the NBA or top 30 player in the NBA, they are remote. That's the thing I'm going to be coming back to again and again. It's the same situation with Desmond Bane. Let's trade Desmond Bane. It's not good enough as a third option. Let's get someone better. Great. Who? How do you get a player better? Trading these guys for picks means odds are, let's say if you traded Desmond Bane for 3 first-round picks, what are the odds you get a player better than Desmond Bane with 3 first-round picks? They're remote. That's just the way the draft works. Desmond Bane's one of the best draft picks in franchise history. He's one of the best draft picks in the NBA in like the last 10 years, maybe even longer. I didn't really study up on that or make notes for that. But Jaren's postseason struggles are legitimate to me. And of course, you can come up with context. You can come up with excuses. But I think Jaren's scoring average going way down in the postseason, where his minutes go up, but his scoring goes down, that's not good. His road numbers, his stats during road games are kind of horrible. In 14 career playoff road games, Jaren Jackson Jr. averages 13.4 points per game. He shoots 35.6% on the road in the playoffs. Now, some of his stats in his first playoff series, in the Jazz series, you could excuse them away because he missed most of the year. He was rusty. It's also early in his career. But it's hard to excuse the stats he posted against the Thunder and against the Lakers a couple years ago and against the Warriors. Those were not good. He posted 7 straight road playoff games where he failed to make more than a third of his field goal attempts. So all of these reasons are why I understand. I'm sympathetic to someone being like, you know what, maybe we should move on from Jaren to restock the cupboard. But I still think it's a terrible idea because restocking the cupboard doesn't get you closer to, of course, the title this year. It's a choice to step backwards. You're not trading value for value. I don't see any way you get back a comparable player. And I think solving the problem of how to win with Jaren is easier than replacing Jaren. Now, going back to the contract numbers, if he makes All-NBA, you have to offer him, if you want to get the extension done and prevent him from going into unrestricted free agency, which as far as we can tell is a huge priority for the Grizzlies. That's why they made the Marcus Smart trade to give them another option to keep Jaren if he doesn't make All-NBA. But if he makes All-NBA, the minimum you offer him is 30% of the cap. However, he will be eligible for 35% of the cap. And now this also gets a little bit difficult. Do I want Jaren Jackson Jr. to make 35% of the cap? No, I do not. I think the 35% money, the supermax money, the true supermax money should be reserved for like the clear-cut All-NBA like first team guys. Like if you're first team All-NBA, oh, easy, do it. Are you always second team? Have you been second team many, many times? Great. Okay, I guess we do it. Are you praying that you're going to make your first third team All-NBA? That's not who I want to get a 35% max. Also particularly difficult for the Grizzlies is they're a team that has shown no willingness to pay the luxury tax. If you pay 35% of your cap while also paying Ja Morant, what's now going to be like 28 to 30% of your cap. Desmond Bane, by the way, only makes like 22% of your cap going forward. That then does become very difficult to compete if you're a small market team that refuses to pay luxury tax, if you are paying that much money to Jaren Jackson Jr. But I still don't think it's an easy, clear-cut decision deciding what to do if Jaren says, I will only re-sign for the 35% max. Would you sacrifice essentially you'd be sacrificing like a role player. If you think about it like that, you're sacrificing another guy who could make like $10 million a season or $15 million a season. If it's that or not having Jaren, it's a hard decision. You probably have to come down on the side of keeping Jaren, and then maybe at that point you have the option of trying to trade him later. But that is a harder decision to me. However, the long and short of it is Jaren's worth the max, period. Now, if Jaren doesn't make all NBA, and of course we'll have the answer for this basically by tomorrow, one thing I've been trying to go through, and I talked about it on some of the previous episodes that I put out, the Grizzlies have about $7 million in cap space, including Santi Aldama's cap hold. I don't think just giving Jaren that $7 million that would be added to his contract for next season and then extending him off that number, the stats for that, it would be something like you give him a $7 million raise early, and then you'd pay him something like 4 years, $190 million going forward. I don't think that's close to what he could actually make for him to agree to it. But maybe he would. Maybe you'd say, all right, over the next 5 years, I'm going to make $221 million, which is roughly what it would be if you gave Jaren that $7 million raise next season. If you compare that to if you go into unrestricted free agency and sign a 30% max, it would be making $260-something million over the next 5 years. So he would be leaving $40 million on the table. I don't know if Jaren would do that just because he's been underpaid the last several years. That's another angle of it that I think is worth considering. Jaren's been underpaid. We've gotten way more production out of Jaren than we actually paid for, the team paid for. So I don't feel like we should get stingy with it now. Now, there are some other avenues to open up cap space. And actually, one thing I've been focusing on, while I haven't been recording episodes, I've been just doing a lot of research on various avenues the Grizzlies could use to improve their roster. Actually, Matt Hardlicka, who has a Patreon that I support, he wrote a very interesting article about this, about how operating as a cap space team gives them some options. And you could do a sign and trade with Santi Aldama and bring back more players. Even if they go into the cap, I've been looking at like the matching values that you could get, because the Marcus Smart deal, while I hated it, and while I still feel like you'd have a lot of optionality this summer if you still have the 18th pick and Marcus Smart's expiring deal. Like, you could trade that for, in my mind, a lot of things. But whatever, water under the bridge, they don't have those things anymore. But still, because of moving off of Marcus Smart's salary, they got really far from the luxury tax. Right now, there's something like $40 million from the luxury tax, and that includes Santi Aldama's cap hold. Even if you renegotiate and extend Jaren, if you add $10 million to his contract for next season, you still might have close to $30 million of space under the luxury tax. You could trade players, like you could trade John Conchar and maybe a future pick, and just with John Conchar's contract, you could bring back a guy making like almost $13 million. You could add up these contracts. If you want to do a big-time trade, like a Desmond Bane trade, would actually bring back a player. You could bring back a player making $46 million, and you can aggregate salaries. Conchar plus Brandon Clark plus Desmond Bane. You can basically bring back anybody in a trade because you can bring back in more money. That is one way, a good way, that the Grizzlies have a lot of flexibility that they did not have before the Marcus Smart trade. Now, let's talk about Desmond Bane and the idea that Desmond Bane is too expensive of a player. Actually, let's do that right after this short break. Okay, I'm not totally sure where the narrative started that Desmond Bane is overpaid. Of course, he makes a lot of money, but in the context of NBA players, it's not honestly that much. Maybe you point to, again, the Grizzlies getting swept by the Thunder and Desmond Bane struggling. Some people have pointed to, in the listener Slack, pointed to the turnover issues, these loud turnovers. He does not have that many turnovers, but it seems like so many of his turnovers were memorable. And of course, he shot a really bad percentage, along with other players, against the Thunder. That matchup specifically was very, very bad for him. There's also sort of this feeling that Desmond Bane had a bad season last year, which is just false. I know how it started. He had a bad stretch in November. It's one of those first impression things where, oh, Desmond Bane's missing some shots. Why isn't he playing better? And then people got in their head, all right, he's having kind of a bad year. He did not have a bad year. His scoring was down from previous seasons, but his production was great. He shot the ball less. He played fewer minutes. He still averaged 19 points per game. He averaged a career-high 6 rebounds per game. He averaged 5.3 assists per game. He shot 39% from 3. He shot 89% at the line. He had a career high in field goal percentage. Desmond Bane had a career high in field goal percentage last year. Had the second best true shooting percentage of his career. He was one of 9 players last season to average at least 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. 7 of those guys are max players or super max players. The only one that's not is RJ Barrett. So the cheapest of those 9 players last season to average 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists is RJ Barrett, who is worse than Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane is paid appropriately. Another way I'd argue that Desmond Bane is properly compensated, over the past 3 seasons, Desmond Bane averages 21.1 points per game, 5.3 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game. He's 39.4% on threes, 88.3% from the line. If you just look at 20-point scorers in the NBA, over the past 3 seasons, there are 50 players who have averaged at least 20 points. All of those 50 players basically make at least $35 million a season. We're talking about the guys who don't. It's like Anthony Simons, who nearly does. RJ Barrett nearly does. And then it's like Wembanyama, who doesn't even really count because he didn't play 3 years ago. But like it's rookie scale guys. Desmond Bane has also proved he's a scorer on a good team. It's not just padding his stats on bad teams. Of course, he was on a bad team the year before last. And there are, I think, reasonable concerns how bad the Grizzlies looked without Ja Morant last year. I'm still not totally sure why the team was so bad with Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Marcus Smart all healthy at the beginning of the 2024 season. But Desmond Bane has shown in the playoffs, he was awesome against the Timberwolves in that series. He did have injury concerns, and maybe you say the injury concerns are an issue. Desmond Bane has missed a handful of games each season. He also has seemingly a chronic back problem, which reared its head early in the Warriors playoff series. But again, of all 20-point scorers in the NBA, they all get paid. Flat out. And if you want to narrow it down further to say which guys also make three-pointers at the high volume, which guys also have elite true shooting percentages or effective field goal percentages, and it narrows down even further, which guys also give you some ball handling and playmaking, it narrows down even further. It's all max players. So I think Desmond Bane is paid exactly in line with his contributions to your team. Last season, by the way, just so you know, all right, so let's go for next season. Next season, right now, Desmond Bane is scheduled to have the 43rd biggest contract just based on next year's money. Now, James Harden's probably going to opt out and make even more money, so Desmond Bane would be 44th. Maybe Miles Turner signs a bigger contract. Who knows? Doesn't really matter. 43rd biggest contract going into next season. Well, guess what? Desmond Bane's about the 43rd best player in the NBA. I mean, I don't know how to rank NBA players, but obviously some publications do, like The Ringer. They have a lot of smart people who work for The Ringer. Do you think they have huge Grizzlies fans that are pumping these rankings up? I don't. Like, it's one thing if like Derek White checks in at like 26th one year or Drew Holiday's really high, but The Ringer ranked Desmond Bane as the 46th best player in the NBA. That's about right to me. I mean, maybe you could argue he's closer to 60th. All right. But still, when you consider the guys on rookie deals who are eventually going to get paid more, when you consider the new extensions some of these players are going to have, do you see Bobby Marks talking about Christian Brown demanding $30 million a season in his upcoming extension? When you look at the full context of the NBA, that's just what guys who can score 20 points per game, that's what they make. Now, is he good enough to be the third option on a championship team? Of course, we have to look at context once again. Who are your best 2 players? That, of course, is the more important issue when you talk about that. Desmond Bane would be the third best player on essentially every team in the NBA, if not higher. Again, he's somewhere between the 40th and 60th best player in the NBA, I'd say. There's 30 teams in the NBA. Do the math. I mean, the only teams with like clear-cut guys as better third options, I mean, like, is it the Celtics? The Cavs? I mean, is he better than Austin Reeves? I mean, I guess that's arguable. Austin Reeves, one of the only guys with comparable production to Bane who makes less. Austin Reeves on one of the best contracts in the NBA. Thanks a lot, restricted free agency. Like the Knicks. I mean, swap out Desmond Bane for Mikal Bridges. Wouldn't the Knicks be just as good? Maybe. Or OG Anunoby. Who's the third best Knick? I'm not sure. Is Desmond Bane better than Miles Turner? He's probably the third best Pacer. He wasn't better than the Aaron Nesmith we saw in Game 1. Incredible Game 1 Aaron Nesmith performance fresh on my mind as I record right now. Like the Warriors, he'd be the third best Warrior. He's better than Draymond Green right now. So I know if Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. are your best two players, can you win a title with Desmond Bane as your third best player? That's a harder question. When you go to that situation, you're going to need a deeper team to, I think, compensate for the fact that that Ja Morant is not like a top 10 guy or top 5 guy, that Jaren's not a top 10 guy. I think the bigger question for the Grizzlies right now is who's your fourth best player? Can you win a title? Can you make a conference finals if your fourth best player wouldn't start on most other playoff teams? That answer is no to me. I don't even know who the Grizzlies' fourth best player is. When the regular season ended, I would have said Santi Aldama. Maybe he's the Grizzlies' fourth best player. Of course, Santi, a free agent, restricted free agent. Is the fourth best player Zach Edey or Jaylen Wells? Scottie Pippen Jr.? Vince Williams Jr., if you ignore last season? I don't know. Like, again, we've been through this. Those guys wouldn't have played a minute for the Thunder. I don't think they'd get in the game very much if they were on the Knicks or the Cavs or the Celtics or the Pacers or the Timberwolves. The Nuggets could probably use some of those guys. But I think the Desmond Bane question, clearly, I think he could be the third best player on a team that makes the conference finals if the rest of the roster is good. Now, I know there's a league-wide trend at reducing depth. And so maybe because of that, you look to pivot. But again, let's go back to the top of the show. Who are you trading Desmond Bane for that's better than Desmond Bane and makes less money than Desmond Bane? That player does not exist. I mean, could you trade him for a comparably talented player who plays a different position? Even that's hard to do. What are we talking about? Like trade him to the Raptors for Brandon Ingram? That's disgusting to me. Trade him and like multiple firsts for Franz Wagner? I don't honestly love that either. So I think Desmond Bane's good enough as a third option, and I think he's paid commensurate with his production. He's roughly the 40th to 50th best player. That's what he makes. Is it more difficult to build your team that way if you're paying Desmond Bane, if he's no longer on the cheapest contract in the NBA, which he was when he was on that rookie scale deal from being the 30th pick? Is it easy to build your team when you're paying fair market value of Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. coming up and Desmond Bane? No, it's not as easy. Which is, of course, why I've been screaming for years that the time to spend was now when they were cheap. Now they're no longer cheap. They're just paid their normal rate. Could Robert Pera go deep into the luxury tax? Of course. Reminder, Robert Pera, last time I checked, is worth nearly $22 billion, making him one of the 5 to 8 richest owners in all of North American sports. We don't repeat that enough. He's richer than basically every NFL owner. He's richer than basically every NBA and Major League Baseball owner. Like Ballmer's up there. The Adelsons are up there. Robert Pera is one of the wealthiest people on the planet. He could pay luxury tax if he wanted to. But of course, now we're far from the luxury tax because of the Marcus Smart deal. I think, to me, again, the biggest issues are your fourth players on the roster, and then you'd still need the top all-NBA level performance from Ja, and then Jaren needs to not disappear in the playoffs, in road games specifically. And then Desmond also Sure, there's some health concerns, but it's not a clear cut to me like, oh, we should do this and this to break up our big three. I strongly believe they should keep the big three together. I don't see obvious avenues where pivoting off of them right now makes a lot of sense. I just think right now you got to keep that together, and we'll find out if they are able to keep that together, or at least in what manner they will be able to keep that together on Friday when we find out what the All-NBA teams are. I know some of you disagree. I know a lot of people are maybe done with Desmond Bane. They don't think Jaren is quite good enough. But again, I think if you look outside of the Grizzlies bubble, you look at how those players are valued league-wide, and then you look at, again, what just everybody else makes. And with the rising cap, it's going up essentially 10% every season for the next few years. Paying those guys, keeping those guys, to me, is the easiest and best way for the Grizzlies to compete. Now, a couple of more things, I guess, real briefly to wrap up the show. There was a report about a week ago that TJ Shorts from Paris Basketball was coming to the Grizzlies. Sportando reported that. Shorts played for Isolo on Basketball Paris. He was EuroLeague MVP. Drew Hill from the Daily Memphian got a source to say that there is no agreement. Shorts is a 27-year-old tiny guard. He's 5'9". He would be eligible for a two-way, so maybe that could happen, but he's a guy with no NBA experience. He's 27. He's 5'9". Not interested. I mean, again, you could put him on the two-way, assuming Yuki Kawamura doesn't come back. We can guess next year Zion Pullen will maybe be on the two-way. Cam Spencer seems like a safe bet that he'll eventually get a minimum regular contract, be on the main roster. So maybe they'll get TJ Shorts here that way. I don't know. Not really into that. The Mavs won the lottery, of course. Seems like bad luck for the Grizzlies. The Spurs got the second pick. So once again, the top two picks coming to the Southwest Division, just like they did back in 2019 when the Pelicans and Grizzlies were first and second in that lottery. I guess the lottery, again, played out kind of poorly for the Grizzlies. Maybe it would have been worse if the Rockets won the lottery, if the Rockets got Cooper Flag, or if the Spurs even won the lottery, got Cooper Flag. If the Thunder jumped up and won the lottery, that was possible. But I think that's enough for today. Of course, we get the All-NBA news on Friday. Then maybe more Grizzlies news after that. But anyways, thanks everybody for listening. A special thanks to all of you who support me over at patreon.com/fastbreak. Breakfast, if you want more from me, best way to get it, the only way to get it, over there, patreon.com/fastbreak. All right, hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.